I would like to give a brief introduction of our Maulana. Jazakallah, we are blessed and honored to have Sheikh Bilal Hussain. He is born and raised in New York with an undergraduate degree in finance from Temple University. Sheikh Bilal studied in Najaf Al Ashraf from 2010 to 2016. Now he is serving the communities in the Northeast of America, focusing on youth programs and helping the next generation to live an Islamic life, Jazakallah, style in the North America. Sheikh is also the director of Zehra Foundation, mashallah. It's a non-profit organization providing humanitarian and aid around the world. We are blessed and honored to have Sheikh Bilal Hussain here. I would request Sheikh to please come. Salawat bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Before we begin our discussion tonight, there's a request for Surah Fatiha for the marhumin of Akbar Zaidi, Tahmina Zaidi, Asad Mahdi, Asad Rizvi, Samina Hassan, and Ashraf Hasnain, and أرواح الكل مؤمنين والمؤمنات ثواب الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد اللهم صل على محمد. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And your loudest salawat to hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Asri wa zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا أهل البيت عليهم السلام. May Allah increase our reward that we receive for commemorating the shahadat and the masa'ib of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One of the interesting things that exists about these Ayam-e-Azah is that the continuation of commemoration that we perform for 2 months, and that we take this time and for a time we discuss the affairs, for example, of Imam Hussein in the field of Karbala, and after that we focus on spending the time to discuss the affairs of the women and the children. Within the culture that is associated with Islam, sometimes there's a debate to say the position of women and children, for example, in our society is that of second-class citizens. However, the definition of this time that we spend in commemorating and honoring the difficulties of these personalities and appreciating the position that these personalities were given by Imam Hussein and given by the Ahlul Bayt and their discussion that was continued is one of the demonstrations to show that no, our religion does not give preference to one gender over another. Rather, the fact that we appreciate all members and we invite all to support, and all have a position within Islam to support the religion of Islam. Such the conversation for tonight that I want to share with you is from the final wasiyat of Imam Hussein to the Ahl al-Haram. One of the most difficult things for Imam Hussein in his situation was leaving Ahl al-Haram. When we read, for example, the Maqatil of Aba Abdullah, and we read the battle of the day of Ashura, we see that one of the things that was very difficult for Imam Hussein was leaving the women and children. Where, for example, we repeat the line quite frequently, remember, هَلْ مِن نَاصِرٍ يَنْصُرْنَا. Is there anyone who will help me? Is there any aid who will come to our aid? And then he continues, he says, is there any guardian who will guard Haram-e-Rasul? Is there anyone who will come and protect Haram-e-Rasul? The condition of Imam Hussein in that final moment, in that moment alone, was not necessarily to say that he was looking for someone to help and come fight for him. Imam Hussein was not asking for someone to come and battle for him and come and defend him and protect his life. Rather, the Imam was saying, is there someone who will protect the sanctity of our women so that I can go and fight? We know this, for example, one of the things that we saw, and before we get to the matan of our discussion, the point of our discussion, is to understand the perspective of what's going on in the field of Karbala at that moment. This concept that women are second-class citizens within Islam, Imam is defeating this concept here by showing the priority. One of the things that we talk about is the position of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And that Abbas was not given permission to fight. Why wasn't Abbas given permission to fight? Some say, right, we see in the popular statements, Abbas was the Alamdar, was the commander of the army. If there is no army, then what's the point of Abbas staying? But Abbas is still not given the permission to fight. Why? You see, and this is where the question comes of understanding the fadail of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. We don't understand who this personality was. Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, when we talk about his bravery, some people, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. Some people, that when they want to describe the bravery of Hazrat Abbas, they say that, for example, when the first attack between the two armies took place, 10 of the companions of Imam Hussein became isolated and surrounded on all four sides by the army of Umar Sa'd. And Hazrat Abbas is the one who went and he attacked the army to free these 10 people. So they say, you see, Abbas was more than 10 people. Because where 10 people were surrounded by the army, one Abbas was sufficient to break them away from the army. So therefore Abbas is greater than 10 people. Others, they come and they say that no, look at when Hazrat Abbas is given permission to attack the army. That there were over 2,000 soldiers, in some narrations 4,000 soldiers stationed in front of Furat. And the one attack of Abbas was sufficient to break the army apart and move 4,000 soldiers. So they say, Abu al-Fadl was greater than 4,000 soldiers. But you see, because we weren't there to witness the battle, sometimes when we research the battle, we start to learn and understand the position of a personality by reading and looking at the context of the battle. When Abu al-Fadl falls, there's a statement, Abu Abdullah says, Al-an anqasara dhahri, that now they have broken my back. That they have taken away my supporter, they broke my back. This statement followed by, after this, it's very famously known that Abu Abdullah called out, is there anyone to help me? Is there anyone to protect Haram-e-Rasul? And the women came and they asked, what happened? And they said, where is Abbas? Oh Hussein, you never called like this when Abbas was present. Where is our brother? Kulthum and Bibi Zainab, it's famously known. And Imam al-Hussein, without having words to explain it, he goes to the middle of the tent of Hazrat Abbas and he takes the pole and he brings it down that the tent falls. These examples and the structure of the argument, as well as the position of Imam Hussein when he is alone, it starts to explain to us what the actual value of Abu al-Fadl was. It wasn't that Abu al-Fadl could stand against 4,000 men, or that he could stand against 10 men. Rather, what you take a look and you see is that as long as Abu al-Fadl was alive, Imam Hussein could enter and exit the battlefield as he pleased. Meaning that the women were in such a security that the Imam never had to worry that the army could secretly attack the women. What that means is even when we take a look at the dalil for this, we take a look and see when Imam Hussein is alone and he's fighting the army, that the army turns and they said, this is one man alone. Let us go loot. Some of us will go loot the tents and some of us go fight this one man. And Imam Hussein turns and he calls out, "O Umar Sa'ad, I did not imagine you to give me the respect of a Muslim, but I imagined you would give me the respect of an Arab." And this is ma'ruf in the maqatil. Umar Sa'ad says, "What do you mean, O Hussein ibn Ali?" And the Imam replies, he says, in the Arab there's the dastur, there's the tradition that as long as the men are alive, the women are not disturbed. He says, Hussein lives, so then why do you disturb my women? So Umar Sa'ad pulls back and he says, you're right, in the culture of the Arab it's inappropriate to attack the women while the men live, so therefore we lift our hands from your women and we return back to you, O Hussein. This significance of this statement and the structure now start to understand who was Hazrat Abbas. Abul Fadl Abbas was the personality that as long as Imam put this one man in front of his tents of women, an army of 30,000 would not dare cross that line and come to the women. That Abul Fadl was that guarantor of the hijab. When we say he was the guarantor of the hijab, what does that mean? That means that his presence was something that was so frightening for the enemy, that as long as Abbas stood in front of these tents, no one would dare disturb the women. Understand a few different points. One, we undervalue. When we want to take the wasila of somebody who was given the title of Babul Hawa'ij. Babul Hawa'ij is the title of the 7th Imam. How is it that someone who is not an Imam earned this status? It's because of the greatness of the sacrifice he preferred for his brother. Understand something. Before we even get to the matan of what happened between Abu Abdullah and the women, this personality, we have to understand. You want to take his wasila, you want to ask for his assistance, understand who this personality is. That he was the one who an army of 30,000 stood in fear of. When you say that he attacked and 4,000 men dispersed, it wasn't just the 4,000 men who were afraid of this personality coming. Rather, as long as they knew Abbas is there, they said, we don't go there because the one who is standing there is beyond our capacity to control. When he frees 10 men, it's not that he freed 10 men, it's that he scattered an army away from 10 men. Abul Fadl was that personality who as a warrior had such status and bravery that the entire army feared him. And Imam Hussein, as long as he had Abbas at his back, he said, my back is firm that the women are taken care of. I may go as I choose and what's in front of me is what I deal with. When Imam Hussein turns and calls and he says, Al-an an kasara dhahri, that now after Abbas my back is broken, it's to say that even from his back now he does not have the security to ensure that he can go into battle. So how did a personality, before, and again, we'll get into our discussion. How did a personality become Babul Hawa'ij? How does this personality become Babul Hawa'ij? One of the explanations that we can take a look at is we see when Amir al-Mu'mineen speaks to his brother Aqil. He says, oh Aqil, before the birth, he says, find me a family that is known for its bravery, that is known for its excellence in battle. I wish to marry into a family to give me brave sons. And Aqil introduces the family of Kilabiyya and says Fatima Kilabiyya is the appropriate person who you should marry. Understand something. What was the purpose of Abbas? Abbas's purpose was, when he was born, was that this is the warrior who will represent Amir al-Mu'mineen in Karbala. But look at this warrior who understands the ita'at of the Imam, listening to the responsibilities that the Imam places on him. That when Imam Hussein forbids him from fighting and says, oh Abbas, you guard the women, Abbas is going against the purpose of his birth. Abbas is putting aside his personal purpose of creation. He was born as the warrior to represent Imam Ali in battle. The same way each personality from the Ahlul Bayt presented their pursa on the day of Ashura. This was the pursa of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet he puts aside his desire, his interest, his focus, his goal of being a warrior in the field of Karbala to be the one who listens to the command of the Imam and stands only in defense, not in attack. One of the things we learn is what was the significance of the women of Karbala, that Aba Abdullah takes the pursa of Amir al-Mu'mineen and places it in defense of the women. that he dedicates this individual to be the defender of the women and the protector of the women so as to allow him to battle openly into the field. And we learn from this that the status of Abu al-Fadl Abbas, that in many aspects he becomes Bab al-Hawa'ij for the preference of the Imam over himself, and his status as being the protector of the women, and his position as the protector of the women. If you're still with me, we'll inshallah begin our discussion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The following is an excerpt from the final will and wasiyah that Imam Hussein gives when he leaves the women, that he turns to them, he gathers them and he says to them, استعدوا للبلاء واعلموا أن الله يحافظكم ويحاميكم وسينجيكم من سرور أعدائكم ويجعل عاقبة أمركم إلى الخير ويعذب أعدائكم بألوان العذاب ويعوذكم إن هذه البلية بأنواع النعم والكرامة فلا تشكوا ولا تقولوا ما ينقص قدركم. The Imam, in his final words to the women, he says, استعدوا للبلاء, prepare yourselves for the difficulties and the bala that are about to fall you. وَاعْلَمُوا, and know that certainly Allah is your protector and your guarantor, and He is the one who will free you successfully from the evil of your enemies. وَيَجْعَلَ عَاقِبَةُ أَمْرِكُمْ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, and that He will make the end of this affair for you, O our women, O our family. He will bring the end of this affair of yours to a good conclusion. وَيُعَذِّبُ أَعْدَائِكُمْ بِأَلْوَانِ الْعَذَابِ, and He will punish your enemies by many different types of punishment. وَيُعَوِّذُكُمْ عَنْ هَذِهِ الْبَلِيَّةِ بِأَنْوَاعِ النِّعْمِ وَالْكَرَامَةِ, and that certainly Allah will compensate you, O women of Ahlul Bayt, for the difficulties you go through by many different types of bounties and raising in your statuses. نِعْمِ وَالْكَرَامَةِ فَلَا تَشْكُوا, so then don't complain. وَلَا تَقُولُوا مَا يَنْقُصُ عَنْ قَدْرِكُمْ, and don't say that which will reduce your status. Within this will of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, for us to understand and to build a relationship with the women and why we commemorate these 30 or 40 days that we commemorate until Arba'in and even afterwards, the difficulties of the women, look and see how the Imam explains the status of the women and gives an explanation of what will happen with them to come. We'll explain this in 3 main points from the discussion of our Imam. If you guys are okay, we're okay? We're good? To understand, and again, it's to give perspective, why do we continue to have these majlises? The first statement that we take a look and we see from this is, وَيُعَذِّبُ أَعْدَائِكُمْ بِأَلْوَانِ الْعَذَابِ. The Imam guarantees, he says, O women of our haram, that these people who are your enemies and who will now disturb your sanctity and who will come and attack you, Allah promises that He will punish them by many different types of punishment. One of the explanations of the different types of punishment that's given is the actions that were taken by the personality of Mukhtar al-Thaqafi. Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, rahmatullah alayh, was one of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and the supporters of Ahlul Bayt, who during the waqi' of Karbala was placed in the prisons of Kufa and not allowed to leave. After, when he exits from the prisons of Kufa, which is approximately 4 years after the event, or 5 years after the event of Karbala, Mukhtar comes out and hears of the situation and raises an army and begins the process of avenging the shahadat of the Shuhada'i Karbala and Imam al-Hussein. In total, they say that Mukhtar in his campaign killed over 18,000 of either the combatants who were present in the field of Karbala or the supporters and the ones who were pleased with the events of Karbala. Why both of these groups? Because both of these groups share in the punishment of being involved with the event of Karbala. When we look at Islam as a religion is not sufficiently happy with the fact that not only did I not do bad, it insists that I'm someone who stands against evil if I don't do bad myself. When we talk about, for example, for our kids that we keep teaching them, Furu'id-Din, how many do we have? 10. Should we take a quick quiz? What's the first? Uh-oh. The adults aren't answering either. Salat, Som, Hajj, Zakat, Khums, Jihad. Don't say anything. Don't tell everybody you didn't know. Everybody's listening. Shh. Amar bil Ma'ruf, Nahi anil munkar, tawalla, tabarra. These two, amar bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar. Amar bil ma'roof is enjoining the good. Nahi anil munkar is forbidding the evil. When we say as a Muslim, one of the things that's necessary for me as a Muslim is that I am always someone who supports good things, and I am always someone who detests and hates bad things. That I stand against evil when I see evil, and I stand for goodness when I see goodness. You see, in Islam, this is a very important tenet that we as a community, we have to perform. Sometimes what happens is when we come to this country or we come to a land that's foreign to us, we say, Baba, let me first worry about myself. Let me take care of my children. Let me take care of my house. What do I have to do with these people? Let them fight and kill each other. Let them do whatever they want to. It has nothing to do with me. But that's not what Islam wants. Islam insists on promoting the concept of enjoining good and forbidding evil. Anything that Allah says is haram or bad is evil, and anything that Allah says is good is something that we enjoy and we promote. One of the most basic examples of this, which is an important example, and we talk about it because as our community and our families grow, we want to protect them from the problems and the difficulties that exist in our society. The most basic of these examples is hating those things that Allah has forbidden. In the concept of hating those things that Allah has forbidden come things, for example, like alcohol. Alcohol is something that in this society is commonplace. For them it's not bad, they don't have a problem, it's in every store you walk into. Now, when we say forbid the evil and we say alcohol is haram and therefore it's evil and therefore we stay away from it, that doesn't mean that my expectation or Islam expects me that yes, when you live in a society like this, you go into a store, you see alcohol, you take it outside and you break it. I say, how dare you sell this? And you start breaking the man's goods. What's going to happen? He's going to turn around and he's going to break you. I say, you're breaking my things, I'm going to break you, I'm going to get you. Or worse, you'll go to jail or something else. You see, nahi anil munkar and amar bil ma'roof, enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, have many different levels. The most outward level of this is that with my hands and my body, I go out and I stop those deeds that Allah dislikes. Very straightforward. And I help and I support those deeds that Allah loves. But if I live in a society that, for example, like this society where I can't, and with my actions I can't go out and support Islam, and I can't stay away from those evil things, that the next obligation that I have is with my words. To go out and say, hey, this thing is bad. This thing is not good. That we don't like this thing. Now in the case of alcohol, you go to the shopkeeper, Pedro, and you say, hey Pedro, alcohol is bad. Pedro's going to say, what do I care about you? Get out of my store. Pedro's not going to listen to me. It may mean that yes, as part of forbidding evil, I don't have an obligation to tell Pedro because Pedro, first off, doesn't believe that this is haram, and then secondly, Pedro's going to consider me crazy. But what it means is that in my house, I continue to have this conversation. In my house, I continue to talk about that these things that Allah doesn't like are bad and evil and stay away from them. That I educate my children and I have conversations with them on a regular basis that these are things that Allah dislikes, stay away from them. These are things that Allah hates, we don't do them. While Pedro may not listen to me, Ali, Muhammad, Hassan, Hussein, Ahsan, my children in my house, Fatima, Maryam, Zainab, they will listen to me. It's not something that should be considered as understood, that we take for granted that no, our children will never do these things. We have to verbally have these conversations. All of those things that Allah hates, we have to talk about in our houses. We have to talk about in our families. We have to talk with our children to ensure that they never become complicit. Say, what can I do about it? Oh well. Because what comes after complacency is acceptance. And we don't want the day to come that our children, for instead of just looking at alcohol in the store, they think and say, I wonder what it tastes like. Or all of my friends do it. In this culture that we live in, children as young as 12 and 13 begin the process of imbibing alcohol. And not only do they drink alcohol, they say, my parents gave it to me. On a holiday, special occasion, or when we were having a party, I took one. If you're not talking to your children about the fact that this action is evil, they're learning it from their environment and the children in their school, that what's the big deal? What's so bad about it? So we have to talk about these things and have these conversations. But now going back to Pedro, when I look at Pedro and I say, Pedro, alcohol is bad. Pedro says, you're crazy, get out of my store. My obligation of nahi anil munkar, just because I can't tell Pedro, isn't alleviated from me. I still in my heart that when I see this object that Allah hates, I'm not indifferent to it. It's not that I say, what can I do? Let them enjoy. I say, no, in my heart at least, that if Allah were to ever give me the ability, I would stop this object from being spread and I would stop the people from consuming it. That okay, if my society doesn't allow me to speak against these evils, that in my heart I don't become indifferent to them. Look back at the example of Mukhtar. Do you think that those people who, for example, went in the streets and cheered, that they were free from the punishment that Allah is going to bring upon them for the masa'ib that were brought to Abu Abdullah? Look again, that those people who are indifferent and they said, what does this have to do with me? They killed the grandson of the Prophet, what do I care? Do you think that person would not be someone who is held accountable for his deeds in the eyes of Allah? That Allah would say, on this earth I place someone who is beloved to me, someone who is close and dear to me, and when they harmed him, you didn't care. We would see that Allah would not be pleased with us, which is one of the reasons that these majalis exist. That we say, oh Allah, count us amongst those with whom you are pleased. When we recite, for example, in Ziyarat Waritha, we say it as well too. Ya laytani kuntu ma'akum fa'afuza ma'akum fawzan azima. We make the statement, we say, oh Allah, woe that we were with them. We would have become successful with these personalities and attained a great success. The same way that we have the desire to be successful for them, we have to have the desire that they should be, those who are the enemies of Islam and enemies of Imam Hussein should be punished. This is what that fundamental that we call within the actions of a Muslim, amar bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar. So we see that Mukhtar took this responsibility upon himself and he gathered up the enemies of Islam and he gathered up the enemies of Imam al-Hussein and he punished them. Now this is where the conversation gets interesting, that some people say what Mukhtar did was a good thing. And some other people say what Mukhtar did was excessive, was a bad thing. Why? You see, in Shari'at al-Islam, in the laws of Islam, in the Sharia, when, for example, someone commits a sin and they commit a sin that is punishable by death, you don't torture the person. You give him a swift death and you send him to Allah and let Allah sort him out. But Mukhtar, when he punished these people, sometimes he tortured them. Sometimes we see he boiled some people, other people he had ripped in half by horses, other people he had shot by arrows, to the extent where you can even see tapestries of the court of Mukhtar and it's just people being tortured. And some people said that what Mukhtar did is bad, or what he did was exceeding the bounds of what's appropriate within Islam, and therefore we shouldn't be pleased with him and nor should we appreciate and approve of these things. There are three ways that we can understand what Mukhtar did is not necessarily a bad thing, but rather is appropriate within the bounds of Islam still, which is an interesting conversation. The first that we take a look at is that when Mukhtar punished these people, what he did before punishing them, he interviewed them. He said, you were one of the combatants or enemies of Imam Hussein in the field of Karbala. And I would say, yes. He says, what did you do in Karbala? And his personality would come and he would describe that I was an archer. I carried spears. I attacked this person. Many of the things that we know about the shahadat of the companions of Imam Hussein and even the shahadat of Imam Hussein, we learned from the actions of Mukhtar. Shall I give you an example? Yes? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Among the supporters of Imam Hussein were the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil. Muslim ibn Aqil, famously, he had the two sons that he took with him to Kufa. And then he had other sons on top of that. Muslim ibn Aqil, mashallah, had maybe 4 or 5 sons, of which 2 or 3 were present in the field of Karbala. After the shahadat of Hazrat Muslim the news gets to Imam Hussein has a conversation with the daughter of Hazrat Muslim, Hamida, which is very famous. And then he turns to the sons of Hazrat Muslim and he says, the sacrifice your father has presented is very great. The difficulty that has passed over you is very great. You don't have to fight. You can leave. And the sons of Hazrat Muslim say, the same way our father never left you in his life, the same way we, his sons, will never leave you in our life. Amongst these sons was a personality by the name of Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil. Abdullah ibn Muslim ibn Aqil was an 18-year-old son of Hazrat Muslim that in some maqatil, it's actually narrated that not Hazrat Ali Akbar, but this Abdullah was the first one of the family of the Banu Hashim to go and to fight for Imam Hussein after the companions were spent. In the court of Mukhtar, he captured an archer, and he said to the archer, "What did you do on the day of Ashura?" And he says, "I was the one responsible for killing the young man, Abdullah ibn Muslim." And I said, "What do you mean? What did you do?" He says, "You see, this young man from the children of Muslim. Muslim was a brave soldier, unlike anyone had seen before. He was one of the great warriors from the family of Abu Talib, and that he was a frightening warrior, and so was his son." And they say this Abdullah ibn Muslim, when he went in to attack as an 18-year-old man, thirsty for 3 days, he killed over 90 of the soldiers of Umar Sa'd. Such that the archer says that as this boy continued to wipe out the combatants who would come at him, the chief, Umar Sa'd, announced that there's no way to approach this young man to shoot arrows at him. And he commanded me to start shooting arrows. Mukhtar says, "Then what you do?" He says, "I shot arrows at him, and the first arrow that I shot, he saw coming, and he blocked it with his hand. As he blocked it with his hand, it pierced his forehead and pierced his hand to his forehead." Mukhtar said, "Then what did you do?" This is how we know what happened. This is how we learned what happened in Karbala. The man says, "Then he began to chide me and to yell at me that, 'Don't you recognize us? We are the family of Rasulullah. We are the supporters of the religion of Islam. We are the children of Ahlul Bayt.'" In this way, as he was speaking to me, the man says, "I shot a second arrow at him that hit him in his heart, and the boy died instantly." And Mukhtar says, "Then what did you do?" He says, "Then I went to collect my arrows. And when I went to this young man, I pulled my arrow from his chest with ease. But," he says, "when I went to remove the arrow from his forehead, it had become stuck, and I began to move the arrow back and forth in his forehead." The companions of Mukhtar, the same way that our heart hurts to hear this, they became so frustrated, and they said, "Mukhtar, we will kill him." And when they ran at him with their swords, Mukhtar said, "No, stop." He says, "He killed the son of Muslim with arrows, you kill him with arrows." So we see that one of the ways that we justify the actions of Mukhtar is that we take a look that Mukhtar didn't perform an excessive action. Rather, he says, whatever it was that you did in Karbala, that's how you will die from Karbala. That whatever you did, we give you the exact replacement of your actions, which in Islam is permissible. That if someone should hurt you in a one way, that you should defend yourself in the same way in which you were attacked. But not to be excessive in this affair. The second point we take a look at is that after Mukhtar went through the listening of what these personalities did, one of the questions he would ask them, he would say, "Was there anything that my Imam said to you before his shahadat?" Because Imam Hussein was in the battlefield for every shaheed. He went to go defend every personality who fell before him. He tried to advise and counsel his enemy as many times as he went out. Sometimes they would say, "Yes, the Imam did speak to me." Mukhtar would say, "What did he say to you?" And sometimes the Imam would make a dua, "May Allah burn you in dunya before you burn in akhirah. May Allah remove water and mercy from you the way you removed water and mercy from us. May Allah drag you on the grounds of this earth the way you have harmed my children like Qasim." So Mukhtar would turn and say, "The Imam said this to you, then this is how we're going to kill you." And when we take a look at those tapestries, for example, and we see that the punishments that Mukhtar gave to these personalities was on the basis of the statements of the Imam himself. That the Imam would say that this person deserves this punishment, or make dua that this person receives this kind of punishment, Mukhtar would say, "Done. We will now punish him the way Imam said to punish him." This is why we take a look and we see, what is the Imam saying to the ladies? He says, وَيُعَذِّبُ أَعْدَاءَكُمْ بِأَلْوَانِ الْعَذَابِ. That they will be punished, these enemies of yours will be punished by many different punishments. And this was one of the examples in how Mukhtar gave this process of punishing them in many different ways than simply just killing them. The other part, we take a look and we see that the actions of Mukhtar are permissible, are accepted, and that Mukhtar is a personality for whom we should pray and we should do dua that may Allah have mercy on him by the statements of what the Imam said or how the Imam behaved. You see, in the religion of Islam, there are three ways of establishing what it is that you should be performing by dealing with the Imam. One is the Imam turns to you and specifically says, "This is wajib," or "You should perform this action." Someone comes to the Imam and says to the Imam, "Ya Ibn Rasulullah, I have this problem, what should I do?" The Imam replies and he says, "Do this action." We say that that action now is something that Islam says I should perform. The second way we learn about what's good in Islam is what the Imam did himself. That at times maybe the Imam didn't discuss it and say outwardly that you should do this and you should do this. But we saw the Imam that when the Imam had this problem, this is what he did. So we say the fi'l or the action of the Imam is something that tells us what's good, and what the Imam stays away from tells us what's bad. The third action that we learn from the Imam is what's called imdha, or what the Imam allowed to happen. You see, an Imam as a hujjah of Allah is someone who has an obligation not just to protect his actions and those people who ask him, but that even around him he should make sure that whatever is being done is permissible by the rules of Allah. This is known as imdha, that if someone was doing something wrong, the Imam wouldn't just say, hey, not my problem. I mean, we may say that, which is a bad thing. We shouldn't do that. We should be careful and conscientious and respectfully help people make better decisions, not chide them, not abuse them. But the Imam wouldn't look at a person and say, not my problem, I don't have anything to do with you, go do whatever you want. The Imam would correctly and politely educate the individual how to correct his actions, how to behave correctly according to religion of Islam. This was known as imdha of the Imam. Shall I give you an example? All right, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A group of companions were going to visit our sixth Imam. As they were walking to the Imam, one of their friends came out of his house on the way to the showers, the community showers, to do ghusl. He sees all of his friends going to the right, the bathroom is to the left. He turns and he says, where are you going? They said, we're going to see the Imam. He said, oh, you're going to see the Imam right now? You have a time? Okay, I'll shower later, let me go with you. He goes with these companions, they get to the door of Imam Sadiq, they knock on the door. The servant opens the door, says, you have a meeting with the Imam, come in. As they come in, this last man, as he's about to come in, who hasn't done his ghusl, is in a state of janabat. The Imam calls from inside that one in your condition does not come into our house. He says, got it. Turns around, goes back and does his ghusl. You see, the person didn't ask the Imam for guidance. The person didn't discuss a question. It wasn't the action of the Imam, but the Imam saw him doing something that was wrong and therefore he corrected it. This hadith, along with a few others like this, is the reason why when we go for ziyarat, when we go into the zari of the Imam, we make sure that we are in a state of purity. Because the Imam explained to us that when you come to our presence, you should come in a state of purity and not in a state of janabat or najas. This action where the Imam takes a look at a behavior of a person and gives him instruction on how to behave is known as imdha of Imam, that the permission of action given by the Imam. This is the reason why we know that a personality like Mukhtar was one who was appreciated. Why? When the heads of the killers of Karbala are brought to Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam Zainul Abidin turns and does shukr to Allah for the one that brought these heads to him, that killed the killers of Karbala. This is an explanation that the Imam is pleased. Otherwise the Imam would not behave in this fashion. Another way we see is when our fifth Imam sits with the son of Mukhtar and he says to him, Rahimallah abak. May Allah have mercy on your father's soul. Your father was our supporter when we had no supporter. Your father paid our debts when we had no way of paying our debts. Your father was our companion and aid when we had no one to help us. When Imam al-Baqir makes a statement like this, you know that the actions that Mukhtar took were not exceeding in their nature, but rather ones that even the Aimma alayhimus salam were pleased with, and we know that Mukhtar was a personality, inshallah, for whom we should all pray and that Allah is pleased with. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Another explanation of this, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يُعَذِّبُ أَعْدَاءَكُمْ بِأَلْوَانِ الْعَذَابِ, that Allah will certainly punish your enemies by many different types of punishment, is the guarantee of this majlis. That when you come here and you sit here and you remember the difficulties that befell the Ahlul Bayt and befell the women for 40 days. For 40 days we keep these majalis in which we mention the masa'ib of these personalities. That within itself is a punishment for those personalities who stood against the Ahlul Bayt. That is a punishment that lives on, that till today they are trying to silence this message any which way that they can. Because it's painful for them. It's difficult for them to witness the fact that those few women who were taken as prisoners, Till today, millions upon millions of people gather to march to the grave of Imam Hussein in remembrance of that day that those women went to Imam Hussein. This is a painful thing for them, that Allah is showing that the message of these women will continue and will move on. The second lesson that we want to take a look at from the statement of the wasiyat of Imam al-Hussein to the women is إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحَافِظُكُمْ وَيُحَامِيكُمْ وَسَيُنْجِيكُمْ مِنْ سُرُورِ أَعْدَائِكُمْ. That Imam Hussein makes a commitment to these women that certainly Allah will protect you and Allah will preserve you and Allah will free you from the difficulties and the evil machinations of these personalities. One of the first questions that we have when we hear this kind of a statement is, but if Allah will protect them, then how are they taken prisoners? And the reply to this is that Imam Hussein himself said that no, Allah wishes to see, in one of the earlier statements to the women, he says that Allah wishes to see you as taken prisoners. And that even from the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when Bibi Zainab sits with Imam Ali at the time of his shahadat, she asks him, Baba, will there really come a day when the promises that I've been told of being taken into prisoner and that my brothers won't be there to protect me, will this really happen? And Amir al-Mu'mineen says, yes, certainly this will happen. The idea that they would be taken prisoners was something that was established as a part of the message and the mission of Karbala. That the completion of the mission of this event of Karbala happens through the process of them being taken prisoner. But you see, women who are taken prisoner in that particular time, there was a consequence to this action. A woman who was typically taken prisoner was a prisoner based upon two different types of things that would happen to her. One is the mental condition and the mental impact of being taken as a prisoner, and the second is the physical impact. When we talk about the mental impact of being taken as a prisoner, specifically for the women, even for the men, was the loss of identity and freedom that happened. In history, if a person was taken as a prisoner of war, their family lineage, their position in society was wiped away. They were no longer an individual anymore. They were treated as the property of the one who captured them. Their identity became the name of their captor, the family of their captor. Their position in society was determined by the position of their captor. It didn't make a difference which family they came from. As a matter of fact, their name was erased from history because they would say, what family do you have? What good was your family to you that you wound up a prisoner amongst enemies? So we would say the mentality of the fact of being taken as a prisoner was this loss of identity and the loss of freedom. And yet we take a look and we see that Allah protects these women, that till today their mention as individual personalities exists. Their identity was never absolved by being taken a prisoner. They were never erased from history. So we see that Allah protected their identity, protected their freedom, in that though they had to be taken prisoners, they did not lose their identity and personality. Rather, we would say that till today, their personality grows and grows and grows as we appreciate and we study the lessons from what they taught us, and we look at the behavior with which they presented themselves. The second point that we take a look at, and we say that a prisoner who's taken at that point in time, specifically a woman, wound up in one of two conditions in her physical state. Either one, when she was taken as a prisoner of war, she was brought to a house and made a servant in the house. And the rest of her existence was as a servant in the house of someone. Or two, she was what the Quran refers to, أَيْمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, what is owned by your right hand. And that she became a possession of a man or a personality in this situation. We see that the women of Ahlul Bayt were never taken in such a condition, and that it never happened to them that they were physically made as slaves or servants to an individual. Some may argue that, for example, that was because, the people had some shame in their eyes, they had some haya, they had some fear of Allah, and that's why, for example, they didn't do this action. We say that unfortunately history proves otherwise. What you take a look and you see is that the Khilafat of Yazid ibn Muawiyah Mal'un, lasted for a period of 3 years. The first year, he was responsible for the killing of Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Holy Prophet. The second year, he attacked the city of Medina. The same army that he had that killed Imam Hussein, the next year he sent them to Medina and instructed this army to sack the city of Medina. The sacking of the city of Medina in history is known as Waqiat al-Harra, the event of Harra, in which this army of Yazid came and attacked and looted the city of Medina. The consequence of this action was that people, when the city of Medina was attacked, they ran for sanctuary to the grave of Rasulullah. That they said, protected by the sanctity of Rasulullah, you won't harm us, you won't come near us. Sallu ala Muhammad. I'll put it in my pocket now, it won't fall again, hopefully, inshallah. But you took a look and you see that when the women and the children and the people rang to the haram of Rasulullah and they said, we seek sanctuary next to Rasulullah, you won't do anything next to us, next to Rasulullah, the army didn't care about the sanctity of Rasulullah. That they killed and they harmed these people next to the grave of the Holy Prophet. In many history books it's written to say that, for example, 1,000 illegitimate children were born in the city of Medina the year after this army, how evil it was, attacked the city of Rasulullah. One of my teachers goes further, he says, no, over 4,000 children are recorded of illegitimate birth after this year. To show that, okay, that these people were truly the worst of society. Yet they didn't put a hand on the best of society. The same way we say that the Banu Hashim, the men of the Banu Hashim were the most excellent in character, in speech and appearance. Remember when we talk about Hazrat Abbas, we call him Qamar Bani Hashim, the moon of Banu Hashim. Meaning he was so handsome that he looked like a full moon. The same way the men were the exception in character and beauty, same way the women were. They were the best of society. And these worst of society, Allah protected the women from these worst of society, and that Allah is the one who stands as the intermediary, that when Imam Hussein says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحَافِظُكُمْ وَيُحَامِيكُمْ, that certainly Allah will protect you and preserve you. This was the preservation that they received, that they were not harmed by these personalities. Rather, our ulama go further to say how Allah protected these personalities. We're okay? Everybody's all right? Sallu ala Muhammad. You see, when we look at history, and we see, for example, in these days that we talk about, that the head of Imam Hussein was taken on a spear. You actually read the description of the head of Imam Hussein. That his hair looked like this, his beard had been color red by his blood, his lips had been injured by this, his eyes were in this condition, his forehead was marked by the stone. All of these descriptions of the head of Imam Hussein, tell me, has anyone ever read to you from history the description of the women who sat on the horses and the camels? You see, the ulama say that these personalities of the women, Allah protected them to such an extent that till today, we don't know who was who. We don't know even, for example, when they say, for example, قالت Zainab, Kulthum and Bibi Zainat al-Kubra were both Zainab. The historians were so blinded by these personalities, these mu'arrikheen, they couldn't differentiate between any of them. We can't go back and actually give you an accurate count of how many women were present with these camels, with these heads of shuhada. Because Allah protected them from even the vision and the sight of these personalities. There's a reason why we came to this conclusion, and there's a piece of poetry known as Maqbool Husseini that's written by Sheikh Hadi Kashif al-Ghita. Sheikh Hadi Kashif al-Ghita was one of the ulama of Najaf who wrote poetry about Waqi'a Karbala. In the final stanza, as he finished his poem, which is a very famous poem known as Maqbool Husseini, he writes, he says, and your women and children, O Hussein, were paraded through the markets where all of the men and women and children could see them. He finished, and he ended his piece of poetry. And then he says, I went to sleep. He says, when I woke from my sleep, I saw a new line added to my poem that said, but Allah protected you with the nur of hijab from the eyes of all of those people. Shaykh Hadi Kashif al-Ghita writes, he says, I didn't write this. So he says, I wanted to erase it. I don't know who wrote it. I wanted to erase it. It's not my poetry. How can I put my name on a poem that includes poetry that I didn't write? He says, I removed the poem. I removed these lines of the poem. But he says, every time I would cover them with ink, the words would come back again and again and again. So he said, I knew that then this must be something that was divinely presented through either the hand of the Imam or someone, that this should be a part of my poem that describes and says that though the women may have been paraded through the market, their hijabs might have been stolen, but Allah protected them with nur from the eyes of the enemies. Which is the reason why, when we see that Allah is the one who protects these women, we don't have a description of them. We don't have an elaboration of how many there were, or what their lineages were, or what they behaved like, or what they carried, other than those things that are necessary to prove the authority of the shahadat of Imam Hussein. We don't have an explanation that sits and talks to us that she wept so many times, or that she said this action that was outside of the bounds of the responsibility of protecting the message of Islam. They were human beings still, but they were protected, where Allah is the one where Imam is explaining, in Allah, yuhafidhukum wa yuhamikum, and showing how Allah protected them. And we see that till today, that the protection of Allah remained with these personalities. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The final point we'll mention, where the Imam makes the statement, he says, وَيُعَوِّذُكُمْ عَنْ هَذِهِ الْبَلِيَّةِ بِأَنْوَاعِ النِّعْمِ وَالْكَرَامَةِ. That certainly, O women of Ahlul Bayt, for the difficulties you will face after I leave you, that Allah will compensate you for what you have gone through by great many bounties and a raising in status and high position and lofty position for what you have gone through. Now, this point that, for example, these personalities are muqaddas, they're holy, they're respected by us for the fact that they went through the waqia of Karbala is actually a debated point. Some people, for example, they take offense to the account. They say, why do you raise them to such a status and you want to take their wasila and you want to attach yourself to them? What's the big deal that they went through waqia of Karbala? And that they say that we're excessive in our relationship with these personalities. However, as we take a look at this, we understand something, that no, rather there is, okay, fine. Let's use the argument to say that, for example, the event of Karbala was not something special and unique that raised the status of these personalities. Let's say that, for example, that had nothing to do with it. Still, many of these personalities are individuals who are qabil al-wasila. They're capable of being wasila for us. Their character was such that they were, think about it. Sayyidah Zainab, regardless of whether she went through Karbala or not, she was alima, ghayr muallima. That she was the knowledgeable woman within Islam who had no one over her who insisted to teach her. Abul Fadl al-Abbas, even without the waqi of Karbala, was a teacher of tafsir of Quran. He was a faqih within the religion of Islam. He was one of the educators of the religion of Islam who knew the Quran and taught it to all of society. Even if it was just to look at these personalities on this characteristic, we would say they are qabil, they are capable, that we should use them as a wasila. One of the mistaken arguments that people make is sometimes they come to this majlis and they want to say that when they sit, they say, yes, today I will prove to you that Hazrat Abbas was ma'soom. I will prove to you Zainab was ma'sooma. This isn't a question. There's no doubt about this that it needs to be proven. You see, in madhab Ja'fari, in our religion, in the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, the only time that we need to address ismat and someone being ma'soom is when they are the hujjah of Allah on this earth and that they are the divinely appointed personality, that we have to take our Islam from them. That when I have to say something that Imam said this statement and I need to be certain that the Imam said this statement, I need to be certain the Imam is ma'soom and doesn't make a mistake. This is known as Ismat al-Kubra, the mandatory infallibility. And this is a point that we debate and we discuss to prove that these personalities were infallible, so that when it comes to the question of how do I pray, how do I fast, once I say the Imam did this, I'm certain that this is exactly what Allah wants, because the Imam can't make a mistake. The concept of being sinless other than outside of these 14 people is not impossible. It's not strange. Rather, it's the obligation of every person who becomes a Muslim to try and become sinless. Our goal is that today, for example, I don't sin. One day sinless. Tomorrow, I don't sin. The next day, I don't sin. I build in my character as a Muslim. A Muslim is a personality who doesn't sin. And we know this because we look at examples that are known to us in our history who behaved in a fashion that showed that one can live a life without committing sins. These two brothers known as Sharif al-Murtada and Sharif al-Radhi. Sharif al-Murtada is a personality who is one of the greatest fuqaha in the religion of Islam. And his brother Sharif al-Radi is that personality who compiled Nahj al-Balagha and gave it to us. That these two brothers were something special within our own history, that even all of the Muslimin respected Sharif al-Murtada and what he taught. That these two brothers, when they have a conversation, what do they say? Sharif al-Radi turns to his brother and he says, brother, it's been 60 days since I committed a sin. Sharif al-Murtada replies, he says, it's been 60 days since I thought of a sin. These personalities, they didn't meet the Imam. They never sat with an Imam. But just by the influence of learning about Ahlul Bayt, their character became so purified. Now you mean to turn and tell me that someone like Sayyidah Zainab and Hazrat Abbas, who are the children of Amir al-Mu'mineen, raised in the family of Ahlul Bayt, that there's some question about them committing a sin? It's impossible. That the ismat of these personalities is something muqaddas, and as a matter of fact for us, it's a lesson to learn. That don't consider sinlessness as something impossible to achieve or something that is outside of the realm of possibility. Rather, it's the goal of every Muslim. It's the goal of every mu'min. It's the goal of everyone who wants the shafa'ah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, to not let him stand in a position of disrespect that his follower is one who commits a sin. Our goal is that when we claim to be the Shia of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that we behave in a fashion that shows that, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, you gave us a perfect example of what to be, we followed your example the best that we could, and we avoided sin wherever we could. This is what we want to achieve. This is our goal. So yes, it's true that these personalities are qabil al-wasila, that they're capable of being wasila and providing shafa'ah for the excellence of their character that they had, and that they attain such a high status. The second point that we mention in understanding this is something in Islam called qa'idat al-iwadh. Qa'idat al-iwadh in Islam is a law that we see in existence in all of the creation of Allah, which is the law of compensation. That everything that exists in this world has a compensation for it. And the way our ulama teach this is they say that difficulty that befalls you in this world is of one of two types. The first type is that the difficulty that befalls you or that you suffer in this life is compensation for an action you committed. That I committed a sin, I made a mistake, I chose to perform an action, and the consequence of that action is a difficulty that befalls me in my life. So this is one aspect of qa'idat al-iwadh. What that means to say is, for example, I speed. I drive 90 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone. And then I hit something. And then my car gets destroyed. Na'udhu billah, someone gets hurt. Some consequence comes about of that action. We would say the consequence of that action is the iwadh. You chose to perform an action, and in consequence of it, the result of it was that it brought a difficulty upon you. Sometimes that difficulty is something we see in our lives, in our day-to-day environment. Sometimes we see that difficulty in our lineage that comes after us. Sometimes we see that difficulty immediately after our death. Sometimes we see that difficulty in consequence of our behaviors and the actions that we chose. You guys okay? Yes. Example? Yes. All right. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A father has a responsibility to raise a good son. A father, one of his obligations is that when he has children, whether they be boys or girls, that he raises them well and he gets involved with them and he educates them and he ensures that they follow the religion of Islam, and that not just in the material world but in the spiritual world they are conscientious of their obligations that they need to perform. Now sometimes it happens that, for example, we ignore the spiritual development of our children. We don't pay attention to it. We're busy. We have other obligations. We give it to other people to perform. We don't pay attention. We insist our child becomes a doctor, a physician, a lawyer, an engineer, or something of this nature in the world, so that we say, okay, I took care of him. I gave him a good education. He earned a good living. But we forget the other side, the spiritual development, the development of his soul, the development of his prayer, the development of his relationship with Allah. Sometimes it may happen that we don't see the consequence of this action in our life. Our child grows up. He has a good job, he's respected in society, he has a good position, he makes good money. No problem, fantastic. But we see the consequence of this action after our death. You see, Death is that phase of life where my ability to influence my good deeds and bad deeds ends. I see the consequence of the decisions that I made and I can't make any changes to it. I can't add more good deeds, I can't subtract bad deeds. One of the things that Allah says that you can do is that in your life, leave behind good children, so that after you die, they pray for you and their prayers or their dua or their supplication for you changes your condition and improves your condition. When we teach our children to pray, some of it is selfish. Some of it is that we want to have a good lineage in the eyes of Allah. The other aspect of it is if this child prays, if he recites Fatiha, if he goes to Majlis, if he remembers Ahlul Bayt, he does dua, he recites Quran, he fasts, and he remembers me in that fasting, I will get the benefit of those actions and Allah will change my book of deeds and improve it. Where we see the example that the Ahlul Bayt are walking by the grave of a man and they say, don't go near this man, he's receiving the punishment of Allah. And a few hours later when they pass by again and they go to avoid the grave, the Imam says, no, it's okay. He said, before he was receiving punishment, now you say it's okay. He said, because his son today went and recited for the first time, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Allah removed the adhab this man was going through. This is the result of qa'idatil iwadh. You raise a good child, you educate him in spiritual matters, and tomorrow the benefit, the compensation you receive for that good deed is that in your grave he assists you. His actions are helpful to you. The same way in qa'idatil iwadh. I may raise a child and I may raise him secular, completely a-religious, atheistic, no religion. In my life, I see no consequence. But tomorrow when my book of deeds is written and presented before me, now I suffer the consequences that I have no one to assist me and to improve my condition after my death. This is qa'idatul iwadh, that there is a replacement. That any difficulty or any mistake that you make in this life, there is a compensation that comes for it, whether it be in dunya or in akhirah, there will be a result to it. But there's another category of difficulty that befalls people. That they didn't do anything wrong, they didn't do anything to deserve it, but Allah puts a punishment, or not a punishment, a difficulty upon them in their life. That's not a consequence of something that I did. I didn't do anything wrong to face this difficulty in life. This difficulty is also subject to qa'idatil iwadh, that there is a compensation for it. For those difficulties that I didn't bring upon myself, Allah promises, He says, I will compensate you for it and give you a reward for that difficulty you went through. I will give you something for what you bore patiently in the trials that came to you in dunya. You didn't do anything to deserve that difficulty, but you went through it and you were patient, therefore I reward you for it. This qa'idatul iwadh is the reason why we see that we are certain of the fact that these personalities whose wasila we seek is the wasila that we get from them in compensation for what they went through and the difficulties they went through after the event of Karbala. Because Allah promises, He says there is a compensation for everything you go through in life. The women of Ahlul Bayt didn't do anything to deserve this aspect of being taken as prisoners or to be put through these difficulties. So Allah raised their status to an incredibly high status where they became a wasila and a source of shifa for other people for what they went through. That the promise of Imam is true. The dalil for the fact that we know this is true is that while Sayyidah Zainab, Sayyidah Kulthum lived long lives, and they did many acts of ibadat, and we could say that they became a wasila for the good deeds that they performed in their life. How do we know that we have a wasila of a 4-year-old girl? The daughter of Imam Hussein. That we know that she didn't have a long life in which she spent it in ibadat and worship, that she should become a wasila. We know that she must have become the wasila for the mu'mineen and the wasila to reach to Allah, and one whose grave is marked and remembered till today because of the masa'ib and the difficulties that she went through in her short life. That those must be the reason why. And that proves to us that if a 4-year-old, 1400 years later, there are those who gather to remember her martyrdom, that certainly she must have attained something in compensation for the difficulties that she went through. Hi, what are those difficulties of Sakina? Khuli narrates, Khuli was one of the enemies of Imam Hussein. He says, on the day of Ashura, after we had completed the killing of Hussein, I went back to my tent to rest. When I was in my tent resting, the news came to me that Shimar and Umar Asad had taken the men to loot the tents. He says, I got up from my tent and I became upset. There are over 18,000, over 30,000 soldiers, and there are very few tents. If I am late to the looting, nothing will remain for me from the rewards of this campaign that we have caused. So Khuli says, I ran from my tent. When I went to the tents of Hussein ibn Ali, I saw that the fires had been lit, that they had started to destroy the tents. So he says, I went looking to see what was left for me to gather. He says, the first thing that I saw was a young man laying on a bed. I had nothing else to take. I pushed the young man from the bed and I stole his bed. Khuli continues, he says, I continued to wander. I saw that all of the hijab of the women had been stolen, except one woman who was walking with a red hijab on her head. This was Zainab. Zainab had such a presence that even the army was afraid of approaching Zainab. But Khuli says, he says, I was under duress. They had taken everything. There was nothing for me. So I went to go steal her scarf. The first question is, why did Zainab have a red scarf on the day of Ashura? The Mu'arrakh describes, he says that when Zainab saw the body of Akbar come, she threw herself upon the body of Akbar. The blood from the chest of Akbar soaked into her hijab. Khuli says, I came and I went to steal the hijab from this woman. But Zainab is not a normal woman. She resisted. Khuli is a young man in the army, a soldier. He tried to take the scarf again. Again Zainab resisted. Khuli says, I lifted a stone. I threw it at the woman and snatched from her hijab. He said, Khuli, then what did you do? He says, as I wandered through the battlefield, I saw a small child whose clothes were burning, but in her ears remained some earrings still. So I went in my hurry that no one should take them from her before me. I went and I ripped them from the ears of the child. I didn't want someone else to take them. They said, then what happened? Khuli says, this child turned to me and said, oh Sheikh, we are the children of the Banu Hashim. If you would have asked me, I would have given it to you. You didn't have to rip my ears for it. This is that daughter of Imam al-Hussein, the child of Imam al-Hussein, who was abused for so many days. Imam Zainul Abidin describes, he says that when they would march us from Kufa to Sham, even when they would give us to rest, they would rest us under the heat of the open sun. My sister was so young and so small. She had been through so many difficulties that she could not withstand the sun, and she would look for shade. Whenever she would look for shade, they would push her back. In some narration, they would strike her and put her back. And she would sit there oppressed, such that Imam Zainul Abidin says, I would stand over Sakina to create shade for her, that maybe she would find a moment of peace. This is that child who was brought in to the prison of Sham. The description of this child in this prison, we say that we commemorate the shahadat of Sakina, the martyrdom of Sakina. But there was no one who immediately killed Sakina. We say that Sakina, we would say more appropriately that Sakina died, that she died. But no, the dhulm on Sakina was so much that she died and she was killed by the oppression. Listen to the example of a 4-year-old child who misses her father. They said Sakina would still lay out the musalla that maybe Baba will come today. I have many things to complain to Baba about. When will my Baba return to me that I may tell him what they have done to me and the oppression I have suffered? They said in this condition of waiting for Baba, one day Sakina goes to sleep. When Sakina goes to sleep, in her dream she sees Baba. And she says, Baba, why did you leave me? Baba, they abused me so much. Baba, why are you away from me? Imam Hussein replied, Sakina, I am not far from you, I am close to you. On hearing the words that Baba has said, I am close to you, Sakina wakes up from her sleep and she complains. She says, Auntie Zainab, where is Baba? Auntie Zainab says, Baba has gone on a trip. She says, you're not telling me the truth. I saw Baba, he told me he's near me, bring me to Baba. Rubab comes, Sakina, why do you cry? She says, I want to go to Baba. Baba has gone on a trip. No, you're not telling me the truth. Baba is here. They said, Sakina, how do you know Baba is here? She says, in my dream, I saw I was sitting in front of Baba. And I began to complain to him that he left me and he went away. And Baba replied to me that he's close to me, he didn't leave me. Hearing the dream of this child, the women began to cry. Sakina wept, he returned me to Baba. Baba doesn't lie, Baba is here. The women cried that how do they tell a 4-year-old child, oh child, they killed your father in the worst of ways, how do we tell you? Sakina wept, the women wept. Mal'un Yazid hears the crying as it raises. He says, why do they cry? They said there is a small 4-year-old child of Hussein ibn Ali who weeps for Hussein and wishes for him to be returned. He says, then return him to her, silence her voice. So they take the head of Hussein, place it in a bowl and cover it with a cloth. As they approach the cell in which this child is crying, they say, child, take this bowl. Sakina has not slept properly. Sakina has not eaten properly. Sakina has not had water properly. She imagines when they give a bowl of food so that the child will eat and stop crying. She says, I am not hungry. Why do you give me food? I want to return to my father. The Mal'un says, look inside the bowl and you will find what you're looking for. The child lifts the cloth. A scream comes out. Baba, who made your condition like this? The child hugs her head to her father's head to her. I tell you, I have children. When I get injured slightly, my child says to me, Baba, would I have been injured instead of you? Would that I have been the one who was hurt instead of you? The child looks and says, Baba, who colored your beard red from your own blood? Baba, who cut the throats of the veins of your neck and took away your life? Baba, mana'ita mani fi sighri sinni. Baba, who is it that made me an orphan at such a young age? Imam Zainul Abidin describes it in the Maqtal, it's written, Sakina held the lips of Hussein ibn Ali to her own lips. And then she passed from consciousness. From one side Zainul Abidin came, Sakina, wake up. Sakina did not wake up. From one side Zainab came, Sakina, wake up. Sakina did not. The mother Rubab called, Sakina, answer me. And the child's soul has left her body. The Masa'ib of Sakina don't end here. When the women came to do the ghusl of Sakina, they said, we don't do ghusl of this child. They said, why not? They said, in her skin is a disease, and that disease will spread if we were to touch her. We can't do her ghusl. Imam Zainul Abidin weeping replies, he says, there is no disease in my sister's skin. What you are seeing is, when my sister was burned on the day of Ashura by the fires, no one gave her treatment for her wounds. Her cloth has grown in with her skin now. So it looks as if there is a disease. Give ghusl to my sister. There are two personalities who were so alone that the burial was difficult for them, that they had no one to help them. One was Ali ibn Abi Talib when he buried Fatima to Zahra, that he brought Fatima to the grave and complained, oh Fatima, how does Ali lower you when there is no mahram to help? How does Ali lower you alone to the grave? That he was so alone. The hands of Rasulullah came, Ali, return my amanat to me. Amir al-Mu'mineen complained, Ya Rasulullah, when you left your amanah, her eye was not bruised. Her ribs were not broken. She had not been weeping for so long. Forgive me, I return your amanah. The second is Zainul Abidin, who when he wanted to lower the body, not only was he alone, he was still in chains that he could not move his hands. Sakina, how does a poor brother return his sister to? They say the hands of Imam Hussein came. Sajjad returned my aman. Zainul Abidin replied, Baba, forgive me. When you left her, her skin was not burned, her ears were not torn, her face did not bear the marks of the smacks of the manoon. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز العجل الأكرم يا الله. Raise your hands to call out with tears in your eyes. Ya Allah 10 times. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. يا محمود بحق محمد يا أعلى بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق الحسن يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Oh Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Oh Allah, keep us on the upright path of Ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, protect our generations from the attacks of shaitan and keep them attached to Ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us from his upright supporters. Entitle us to the shafa'at of Imam Hussein in dunya and akhirah. Matim Hussein.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Karbala, Karbala, Karbala hai Karbala, 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 Karbala hai Karbala, 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 Karbala hai Karbala. जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे, रोज़ाए शब्बीरी पर दूंगा दुआ ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे। है जहाँ गंजे शहीदा, है जहाँ नहरे फुरात, है जहाँ गंजे शहीदा, है जहाँ नहरे फुरात, जिस जगह सैयद मेरा प्यासा रहा ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे। जिस जगह जागी थी किस्मत हुर की वो देखूंगा मैं, जिस जगह जागी थी किस्मत हुर की वो देखूंगा मैं। आसियों पर कैसे होती है अता ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला चल मुझे। इस कदर नादार हुज़ा दे सफर कुछ भी नहीं, इस कदर नादार हुज़ा दे सफर कुछ भी नहीं, तोश पर अपने बिठा कर ए हवाले चल मुझे, जाने वाले करबला के करबला ले चल मुझे, जाने वाले
کربلا لے چل مجھے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، جس جگہ عباس کے بازو قلم ہو کر گرے، اس جگہ میں بھی کروں ماتم، ذرا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے لے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے، دل الجھ کر آ گیا برچی میں اکبر کا جہاں، دل الجھ کر آ گیا برچی میں اکبر کا جہاں، دل وہاں میں بھی کروں اپنا فدا، لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے، چل گئے شام غریبا میں جہاں خیمے تمام، جل گئے شام غریبا میں جہاں خیمے تمام، جس جگہ ننھا سا ایک جھولا جلا، لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے، ہائے وہ مقتل جہاں بالی سکینہ رات میں، آئے وہ مقتل جہاں بالی سکینہ رات میں، ڈھونڈتی پھرتی تھی سینہ پاپ کا، لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا 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 لے چل مجھے، روزہ شبیر پر دوں گا دعا، لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے جانے والے کربلا کے، کربلا لے چل مجھے.
Yo sing, yo sing, yo sing. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. The luminous moon's brightens the way, the rising sun that brightens the day. Heaven without you would be in flames. You're the heaven in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. I left my heart in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. Your visitors all hold their hands. Enemies will never understand. How can the water lose to the sand? How can the thirst win in Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala? From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala, Karbala, Karbala. Karbala, in Karbala, in Karbala. From Karbala, Karbala, Karbala to Karbala.
Ya Hussein, سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگ، جدائی باپ کے سینے، جدائی باپ کے سینے کی مجھ کو کھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، قفس غربت اداسی شمر کا ڈر پیاس کی شدت، قفس غربت اداسی شمر کا ڈر پیاس کی شدت، ستم اتنے پڑے معصوم کو موت آ گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، وہ ماں جو دھوپ میں اکثر علی اصغر کو روتی تھی، وہ ماں جو دھوپ میں اکثر علی اصغر کو روتی تھی، سکینہ کی قضا اس پر قیامت ڈھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، بندھے ہاتھوں پہ ایک بیمار لایا بہن کی میت، بندھے ہاتھوں پہ ایک بیمار لایا بہن کی میت، یہ اولاد نبی پر کیسی غربت چھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، پدر کی خون بھری گردان پہ بچی نے جو لب رکھے، پدر کی خون بھری گردان پہ بچی نے جو لب رکھے، یہ منظر دیکھ کر تو خود قضا گھبرا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں، چچا بابا برادر سب کے سب تو کربلا سوئے چچا برادر سب کے سب تو کربلا سوئے سکینہ کو نہ جانے شام کیسے بھاگ گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں لکھو شوکت پڑھو سرور بتاؤ ساری دنیا کو لکھو شوکت پڑھو سرور دکھاؤ ساری دنیا کو علی کی لاڈلی پوتی شہادت پا گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں جدائی باپ کے سینے جدائی باپ کے سینے کہ مجھ کو کھا گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں سکینہ شام میں مر کر یہی سمجھا گئی لوگوں
How long I long for Karbala.
Hussein, Hussein,
Come on, you Ben al-Haramain.
Hussein, Hussein,
How long I long for Karbala.
Hussein, Hussein,
Come on, you Ben al-Haramain. As soon as I meet you, I'll wail and beseech you, Bain al-Haramain. So don't you blame me if I go crazy when Zainab raised me, Sakina trained me, mourning for Hussein, Salar Zainab, Amir Husseinam, ونعم الأميرام ونعم الأميرام سالار زينب أمير حسينام ونعم الأميرام ونعم الأميرام. Send me to Karbala, leave me there. Send me to Karbala, leave me there. Send me to Karbala, leave me there. Leave me there. Send me to Karbala, leave me there. Send me to Karbala, leave me there. Send me to Karbala, leave me there, leave me there. Hussein, 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 Hussein. Daughter of Hussein, Sakina, after you she is Yatima. Mother of Hussein, Fatima, watches over this arena. When your head was struck with the sword, Hussein, Hussein, John, Fatima shed tears. And when the hands of your brother came back with no water, and Abbas said his final farewell to Hussein, his master. In Karbala, why won't you feed him? In Karbala, how did you feed him? And when Hussein needed the water, Al-Qameh, why won't you feed him? I'm calling Husaina, beating the chest to ease the pain. I'm calling Husaina, beating the chest to ease the pain. Bain al-Haramaina, will lose my voice calling your name. Bain al-Haramaina, will lose my voice calling your name. Hussein, why? Hussein, why? Karbala, Mawla, 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 the son of Zahra, 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 martyred, 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 martyred. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله وخاتم النبيين، السلام عليك يا